The world's richest guy is set to buy one of the world's most influential social media companies. Elon Musk struck a deal to buy Twitter at a price of roughly $44 billion.
Why make that offer?
Well, I think it's very important there to be an inclusive arena for free speech.
Well, they said it couldn't be done, but he has done it. Elon Musk is going to be the new owner of Twitter. And that means he's going to be able to change the parameters of what people can and can't say on the platform. Now, broadly speaking, conservative types like Nigel Farage, Kayleigh McEnany and Ben Shapiro are delighted, while liberals, including President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and a host of Hollywood celebrities, including Rob Reiner, appear very concerned. Musk insists people have nothing to fear. He says he plans to improve Twitter so that there's more freedom of speech, not less. In fact, this visionary inventor slash businessman says he's trying to save civilization itself.
We've been hearing all week from people with dreams about what the next era of humanity is going to be. And now, arguably, the biggest visionary of them all, Elon Musk.
He seems to be like a guy that if you had a movie character, and the movie character was this like super billionaire, and he was really genuinely working to save humanity.
This building is the most advanced car factory that Earth has ever seen.
That's why everyone is so excited that Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter.
A few hours ago, you made an offer to buy Twitter. Why?
How'd you know?
Oh, it's happening, people!
Elon Musk is offering to buy Twitter, all of the shares he does not currently own, for $43.4 billion in cash. He also says he wants to take the company private.
Musk writing a letter to Twitter chair Brett Taylor saying, quote, Twitter has extraordinary potential. I will unlock it.
And I'm not sure that I will actually be able to acquire it.
Breaking news right now. Elon Musk is buying Twitter.
After weeks of uncertainty, Elon Musk struck a deal to buy Twitter at a price of roughly $44 billion. But the question is, what's he going to do with it?
Elon Musk says he is buying Twitter to save free speech online.
A white knight has appeared.
Twitter has become kind of the de facto town square. It's just really important that people have both the reality and the perception that they're able to speak freely within the bounds of the law. You know, so one of the things that I believe Twitter should do is open source the algorithm.
He wants to make the algorithm more transparent so we know why things are trending or why tweets go places. I like that, right? And he wants to get rid of bots and scams, which I love.
You know, the idea that he's also now going to be essentially the referee of major political speech around the world, all of that is definitely way outside what Elon Musk has ever done before.
One of the biggest social media companies in the world will only be accountable to that one guy and what he considers free speech.
If liberals are upset with Twitter, now that Musk owns it, they can form their own platform that has more censorship.
My strong intuitive sense is that having a public platform that is maximally trusted and broadly inclusive is extremely important to the future of civilization.
Well, that's a pretty big statement, and he said something similar on the day Twitter agreed to sell to him. Free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. So what does free speech look like to Elon Musk, and how does his idea of free speech differ to Twitter's? Here's a clue.
You've described yourself, Elon, as a free speech absolutist. But does that mean that there's literally nothing that people can't say and it's okay?
Well, I think, obviously, Twitter or any forum is bound by the laws of the country that it operates in. Obviously, there are some limitations on free speech in the US, and of course, Twitter would have to abide by those rules.
Well, based on that, we can expect Elon Musk to overhaul Twitter's terms of service, the rules governing what can and can't be said on the platform. The rules are several pages long, and currently many conservatives believe they're drawn up and enforced in a way that is biased towards liberals. The most famous example of this alleged bias is the censoring of Donald Trump's tweets towards the end of his presidency, which culminated in his expulsion from the platform following the riot at Capitol Hill last year. You may remember Elon Musk spoke out right after Trump was banned, tweeting, "A lot of people are going to be super unhappy with West Coast high tech as the de facto arbiter of free speech." And so, as you can imagine, a lot of conservatives hope that Twitter's new owner will let Trump back on the platform. Musk hasn't addressed this directly, but recently stated he didn't like permanent bans.
I do think that we want to be just very reluctant to delete things and have just be very cautious with permanent bans. Timeouts, I think, are better.
Of course, Trump has said he's not interested in returning to Twitter and prefers his own social media platform, Truth Social. But since that's really struggling, it's hard to believe that Trump wouldn't return to Twitter, given he once had nearly 89 million followers. Well, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, a number of liberals are threatening to leave Twitter if the sale to Elon Musk is completed. Actress Jamila Jamil, never heard of her, tweeted, "I fear this free speech bid is going to help this hell platform reach its final form of totally lawless hate, bigotry, and misogyny. Best of luck." And the fairly well-known film producer Rob Reiner said, now that Elon Musk is buying Twitter, the question for all of us is, will he allow a criminal who used this platform to lie and spread disinformation to try to overthrow the US government to return and continue his criminal activity? And if he does, how do we combat it? Presumably talking about Donald Trump there. Anyway, Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren warned, this deal is dangerous for our democracy. Billionaires like Elon Musk play by a different set of rules to everyone else, said the millionaire senator who's been in politics for years, accumulating power for their own gain. We need a wealth tax and strong rules to hold big tech accountable. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos, the billionaire owner of the liberal-leaning Washington Post, said, without any irony, interesting question, did the Chinese government just gain a bit of leverage over the town square? A reference to the fact that China is a huge market for Tesla. And President Joe Biden's spokeswoman has indicated that even the US government is concerned.
No matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause.
With all this opposition, it makes you wonder why Elon Musk would even bother with Twitter. Okay, he's a big fan of free speech, but as a business decision, it might be questionable. Since it went public in 2013, Twitter's posted a loss pretty much every single year. Last year, it posted a $221 million loss. It's also much smaller and less popular than other social media platforms, with just 217 million active users. Compare that now to Facebook, with nearly 3 billion monthly active users, and Instagram, with nearly 1 billion. In fact, Twitter's numbers are inflated by so-called bot accounts, which Musk has pledged to kill off. And that will have the effect of reducing Twitter's user numbers, so it may make even less money from advertisers. And finally, investors are rather worried he's bitten off more than he can chew and won't be able to give his existing companies his full attention. Just look at Tesla's share price since the deal was announced. Well, it's got to the point that even satirical shows are making fun of him.
Elon built electric cars, he's going to Mars. Why is he even involving himself with Twitter? It would be like if the Prince of England gave it all up just to marry an actor from Suits. Plus, I gotta say, Twitter's not even profitable anymore. It just feels like a bad business decision.
Okay, let's bring in our guest now. And in the top left there, we have Patrick Boyle, a professor of finance at King's College London, who thinks that Musk has no real plan for Twitter and is acting on a whim. Leon Emirali is a communications advisor and tech investor who thinks, actually, Musk is going to take Twitter to the next level. Josh Pasek is an associate professor of communications and media at the University of Michigan. He believes that Musk's views on free speech are very weird. And in the opposite corner, we have Chris Ruby, who's a digital media analyst in New York and is looking forward to the era of Musk. Well, Patrick Boyle, we'll start with you, one of our favorite guests. However, we have to make fun of you a little bit because on your very popular YouTube channel, you put out a very long video about why Elon Musk will not get Twitter and basically describing him as playing a game.
Well, it looked like a very silly deal, to be honest. And in truth, it makes very little financial sense. Like, even if you look at it right now, the deal spread is very wide. Like the merger spread is around 11%, indicating that it's not a perfect deal. And, you know, in truth, it really makes almost no financial sense. And we saw yesterday Tesla fall in price by basically 3 Twitters. You know, it's down 12% actually yesterday, around 10% now, based on just the fact that he possibly has to either liquidate some stock or that he's at risk of a big margin call by putting up $62 billion worth of stock to borrow $12.5 billion to pay part of the cost of Twitter.
I see you're still hating on Musk there, Patrick. I have to ask you, though, why did Twitter's board, which has a fiduciary duty to its shareholders, accept the deal then?
Oh, I mean, it's a good deal for them, right? Or at least it's a reasonable deal for them. If you look at it, basically, Twitter is a company that last year had earnings before tax and depreciation of around $620 million. He's paying $44 billion for that. He's going to take on debt that has carry of around $1 billion. So, you know, it's
yes, but
it's not necessarily a good deal for him.
A lot of people, and I think you may be amongst them, said that the share price offer wasn't nothing special compared to, you know, say last year's average share price for Twitter. So did he get a bargain then?
It's hard to say because, you know, the truth is a lot of this stuff, it's sort of priced on expected earnings way out into the future. Like I would not want to invest in Twitter. I don't think it's a good deal. It doesn't seem to have made money in the past. It's been around for a long time. It's never really been a profitable business, or at least sustainably profitable. But equally, you know, these tech firms trade at these kind of huge valuations.
When he did get it, when he secured the deal, and it was sort of breaking news, did you sort of fall off your...
The deal is not done yet, right?
No.
It's still pending shareholder approval.
Shareholders and regulatory approval, you're absolutely right. But when the news broke that Twitter had agreed to sell itself to Elon Musk, what was your reaction?
Well, you know, that wasn't the thing that surprised me. It was even just when he secured financing, because the truth is initially his sort of approach to Twitter was a fairly wide, it was kind of like if you drove through a neighborhood and shouted out the window of your car that you'll buy someone's house from them. It was that kind of offer where he kind of came up with a number that basically is kind of designed to make pot smokers laugh. And, you know, made an offer without securing any financing. So once he had secured financing, it became a more serious offer. Like early on, he does have a history of kind of, frankly, pranking people or sort of, you know, kind of clowning around. So you know, it was not taken seriously by the market. It wasn't taken seriously by the board of Twitter, simply because there was no financing in place and there was, you know, no real reason to think he would complete the deal. And in fact, even right now, it's trading at around an 11.5% discount. Usually mergers are much tighter than this. And the main reason is that even, you know, there are many situations in which a buyer could back out, and that is still being priced by the market as being not massively likely, but maybe a greater break risk is in than you'd normally see.
Leon, when Elon announced he'd made an offer, what did you predict that he was going to go through with it?
I mean, who can predict anything when it comes to Elon Musk? I don't think anyone would be wise to predict what was going to happen at the end of that. But obviously, it looked as though it's happening. And, you know, look, Elon Musk, if anyone in the business world has got the Midas touch, it's him. And I think that he has a vision for Twitter that actually is quite appealing. This idea of free speech, but also coupled with human verification. So hopefully that filters out the nastiness on Twitter. But the key thing here is generating a business model for Twitter that works beyond advertising. And I think that is what Elon Musk is going to be trying to do. And as I say, look, if I was a betting man, I'd put my bets on Elon Musk being able to make it work.
Well, you are a betting man. You're a tech investor, aren't you? So now that Elon Musk is nearly going to own it, once he gets the shareholder and regulatory approval, do you feel more or less inclined to put your money in the company?
Well, I think the record shows that whenever Elon Musk goes near a business, the stock price tends to rise and the business tends to perform. There's one exception to that, which I think is now Tesla. Hugely successful business, but as Patrick says, their share price fell 12% yesterday, 10% today. If I was a Tesla investor, I'd be slightly concerned that Elon Musk is going to get wrapped up in what's going on Twitter, because despite being a fairly insignificant business in the grand scheme of things, it has got influence, it has got soft power. And if Elon Musk's reputation takes a hit, if there's boycotts, if there's some sort of unrest about him owning Twitter, and that filters through to his other business interests, I think Tesla shareholders are going to be concerned. But I'm going to wait and see whether I take a punt on Twitter.
Leon, you mentioned a couple of ways in which Elon Musk plans to transform Twitter. One of them is tackling bots. Will this all improve the company as a business?
Well, look, who pays Twitter right now is advertisers. And what they're looking for is information, data on the people that they can advertise towards. You look at a business like Meta, far more successful than Twitter has been, and they've been able to crack that because they've got that level of data and the wealth of information on potential advertising targets. So if Twitter can change the user experience where it becomes slightly more personal, it becomes less of a digital town square, which I know is what Elon Musk refers to it as, but ultimately if it becomes more than just a shop to argue around, then it becomes attractive to advertisers. So if you get rid of those bots, if you get rid of some of those more nastier elements of what happens on Twitter, then I think it does become attractive to advertisers and therefore Twitter's bottom line.
Just really briefly, how many years would you give it for him to turn things around and for the company to make a profit?
Social media is not easy. It isn't an easy game either to enter or to disrupt. So I think it's going to take time. I do think it will be a long-term bet from Elon Musk here. I'm looking at about 5 years if I was to put a number on it. It could be less, it could be more. Let's wait and see.
Okay, look, we've talked about the business aspect of it. We're in a bit of a rush. Let's move on to the freedom of speech debate. Chris Ruby, I'd like to start with you. Ostensibly, he wants to buy Twitter because he wants to save civilization by saving free speech on one of the most important platforms in the world. Do you agree that Twitter has to be overhauled?
So I agree that Twitter has to be overhauled, but I also think that there are issues around content moderation that are complicated and that nuance is really important when we're having this conversation. Too often when I hear people reporting around free speech on this, they're sort of using free speech as a blanket term without having a full understanding of what content moderation policy really looks like on the back end and how that is actually executed or implemented. And to give you an example of that, last week I did a segment on this when my first initial impression when I was asked about Elon Musk and free speech and will he turn and save the world around, I said, sure, he can tackle free speech, but that is one of many other issues that exist. As a woman on that platform, I believe that abuse and harassment is one of the largest issues he will have to address outside of free speech. After saying that, I actually started digging into the data in the most recent Twitter transparency report. And if you look, actually, the data supports that hypothesis, that abuse and harassment, over 1 million accounts were actioned for abuse and harassment, followed by hateful conduct, right? Those are very large issues. And so when you put free speech in the context of hateful conduct and abuse and harassment, there's nuance involved with figuring out how to handle each of those account issues. And I'm not sure that just saying free speech without having any sort of plan around what that means or what that looks like.
Let's try to guess what his definition might be. He says he's a free speech absolutist. Perhaps he's saying that Twitter should mirror the law of the land. So the First Amendment, as long as you're not breaking the law in the real world, then you're not breaking Twitter's new terms of service in the virtual world. Would you be happy with that?
So if I say I want to kill you on Twitter, is that breaking the law?
I don't know. Is it breaking the law if you say that to me on the street in America? It should be.
On the street? Well, this is exactly the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be threatening language, and you'd get in trouble for that on the street. You'd get in trouble for that on Twitter.
Not necessarily. And I would say, unfortunately, in an ideal world, that would be correct. I would also say the second issue that he's going to have is execution or implementation or adherence to the Digital Service Act, which is an extremely important part of this entire conversation around free speech, right? Because what he wants to do with free speech is directly oppositional to what the Digital Service Act in the EU is looking to execute.
Just a quick one for you, because I know that Josh has strong views about this. Do you think that Donald Trump should be allowed back on Twitter?
Sure. I think that he should be allowed back on Twitter. I don't think that he is going to be returning to Twitter because his focus is on Truth Social. And interestingly enough, Elon Musk tweeted about Truth Social last night, saying that Truth Social beat out TikTok and Twitter and was #1 on the App Store. So I'm not sure what that means or where to go with it. I also think the idea of who should be allowed back on Twitter, again, is a complicated issue. Is he going to undo the TOS? Is he going to undo the trust and safety decisions that were made prior to him? This is a question everyone is waiting to know.
Josh, it just shows you, doesn't it? For much of Chris's answers, you were agreeing with her about the nuance and the difficulties and so on. But as soon as she said Donald Trump should be allowed back on Twitter, you were shaking your head. So it's very, very difficult subject, freedom of speech, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the challenge is you've got a robust public discourse is really something critical to an effective democracy. But a robust public discourse can't be a toxic discourse at the same time. And so the question is, how do you balance those two things and ensure that people don't come into places where they're either inciting harm or they're doing really dangerous things on these platforms? Even in the US context, right, the freedom of speech has a limit, right? The proverbial yelling fire in a movie theater is something you're just not allowed to do. But it goes beyond that in the sense that free speech legislation is about government. It's not even about media platforms. And so the notion that this is what we're talking about with free speech, I think, is really misunderstanding it. And the idea that if you open up the algorithm, you're going to magically get a decent understanding of how how decisions should be made around toxic discourse, I think is naive. You're going to be giving a roadmap to nefarious individuals who are trying to find a way around it.
So along with getting rid of the bots, this is another one of the pillars of Elon Musk's plans to reform Twitter, which is to make the algorithms open source so that people can see why certain things are trending and why certain things are not doing so well on Twitter. You say that's actually bad? It sounds democratic.
Opening up everything has benefits and has disadvantages. And the challenge that you end up with in a social media environment is that if what you're doing is having essentially no legislation whatsoever, which is the way that Musk is sort of describing this, is open everything up, let everyone see it, don't put in any legislation, let everybody sort of do whatever they want, then there are a variety of processes and a variety of kinds of information that start spreading, and that can do so in ways that can be dangerous. So there is a real need to prevent...
Patrick wants to just jump in for a second. Go ahead, Patrick.
I'd point out that one of the issues that Musk brought up yesterday, which is quite valid, is that Twitter has sometimes tried to bury stories. The example being the New York Post story about Hunter Biden in the lead up to the election. And so in a way, like, all of the talk of what should be, what should be stopped, there's also just the truth of maybe it's questionable that a platform should be burying stories, in particular ones that are released by reputable newspapers.
I mean, this gets really difficult, especially in the contemporary era when we have, a variety of media sources that are decreasingly attentive to what we know about society in certain ways. And so we have media that are sort of presenting different realities to some degree, that are sometimes themselves spreading misinformation. And who adjudicates this becomes, I think, a huge societal problem. The idea that platforms that are disseminating information don't have an important role there, I think, is naive. How they do it, I think, is an incredibly fraught task. And obviously, no platform is going to get it perfect. But that challenge is a critical one.
Chris, come in for a last answer.
Yeah, again, one of the other things that I thought was really interesting after reviewing this transparency report is that they received the largest number of DMCA takedown notices that they have ever received in the history of doing this report since 2012. This shows me that there are a lot of legal issues that people have with defamation on social media, and child sexual exploitation, by the way, was a close second behind abuse and harassment. So there are a ton of legal issues here, and I'd like to hear a plan here of how Elon Musk really wants to tackle all of these things, right? Free speech is a broad term, but let's really get down to the details of how he wants to attack.
Okay, and there we'll have to leave it. Chris Ruby, John Pasek, Patrick Boyle, and Leon Emirali, thank you all very much for your contributions to The Nexus. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Remember, if you want to see this or any of our other episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Until next week, then, goodbye.